All right. What's going on, y'all? Jay Myrex, ultrawest.com. We're about to get this started in just a moment. Y'all go ahead and start piling on in here. We're about to get this started, but I appreciate y'all joining already. You know, I got the chat open, so I'd love to hear back from everybody. Go ahead and this is the producer function, so go ahead and participate. Comment, talk, chop it up with each other. That's how we get down here. So we're about to get this started. Appreciate everybody for joining. If you can't hear me well, please let me know in the chat room so I can adjust the levels. As always, this is a work in progress. But what's happening with y'all? It's Jay Myrex, ultrawest.com, once again for another producer function. So if this is your first time checking this out, the producer function it's not really a podcast. It's more of a hangout. And what we do here is we discuss music production related topics. I engage with the chat room here. We discuss things that come up in the chat room, but I also like to show things like, music production related topics. And, in the past, we've done things like explore the Kai Force, or, we just talk about all kind of things related to the producer community. It's really designed for you guys. It's designed for producers that are looking for alternatives to all the mess that's out here in the world, all the all the craziness that's out here. I just wanted to provide another outlet, another place where we can get together and really just hang out and make it about fellowship at the end of the day. I think there's so much negative stuff in the world right now, and it's always good to have a place where you can get together and just speak with like-minded individuals and build. So that's what this is about. This is about building. All right. So what's going on with everybody? I see people starting to come into the chat room. Ro Al, what's going on? Appreciate you joining. JPTV3, what's going on with you? Appreciate you joining. Please, everybody, make sure you go ahead and like this video. Go ahead and share it with other people. If you got folks that that might want to hang out and just chop it up or whatever, feel free to share this link with them across social media. All right, man. Let's see. Beats by Rossi. Peace. What's going on with you? So, I got a few things that I want to talk about tonight on this producer function. But like I said, it's about the community. It's not just about what I got to talk about. But I do want to address a couple of things. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was just kind of touching on the Motif ES sampler. I talked about it a little bit in the last producer function, just because I feel like it's a slept on sampler based upon the time that it came, the time it came out in. It was kind of more of like the MPC was the main sampler that everybody used, and nobody really used the Motif for sampling primarily. There's a few exceptions, obviously, but I think for the most part, we don't discuss it enough when we start talking about samplers. And, I've been kind of digging into it a little bit more just to see what else it can do. If you've watched my channel over the years, I've kind of had the Motif in my arsenal for a very long time. I started using the Motif around 2004, and I primarily used it as more of like a workstation keyboard, more for like the instrument sounds and whatnot, because the whole thing about workstation keyboards is really kind of the pursuit of realistic instruments. That was always kind of the idea for a lot of people, was like you're looking for the most realistic set of instruments to use. And I think over time, what happened was you got a lot of software synthesizer, software samplers that really overshadowed what we would normally use a motif for. So over years, it just became less and less relevant because you can pull up, even EXS24 on Logic, but you could also, Contact, has become one of the predominant software samplers on the market, and it's been that way for quite some time. So, I wanted to just kind of talk about this as a sampler more so because over the years I stopped using it as much as a workstation instrument. But I think with all of the equipment that we get, it's important to not just quickly discount it because the rest of the world has moved on. Because I find, especially with workstation instruments, a lot of the users tend to move quickly to the next thing, and because they're chasing more of the next sound as opposed to really digging deeper into the instrument. So I find that a lot of people that use workstations tend to burn out a bit quicker, at least on that. So, that's why I wanted to start to really dig into the sampler. So I'm gonna talk about that tonight. Probably show a little bit about, kind of some ideas, at least. Not really, this ain't a tutorial or anything like that, but I'm gonna show you some ideas around, what I find interesting about it for today, at least. Also, I'm also gonna talk about, I had an opportunity to play with Logic Pro 10.5, the latest update. I was kind of slow to work on that because I actually have to install it on a separate system. It's not on my main system at all. So I had a chance to really sit down and play with it this weekend, and I got some interesting thoughts. Like I said, I'm not quick to try to provide a judgment on a software or hardware piece after using it one time, because I think that was not really appropriate. But I think just some initial thoughts and ideas that I got that I want to share. I'm gonna acknowledge a couple more people in the chat room, and then we just gonna get started. Let's see here. Beats by Rossi says, I just shared an MPC gang. I appreciate that. Appreciate you, man. William Oates, what's going on? Appreciate you joining. Boomer, what's happening with you? Love, peace, and power to you too, bro. Hope all is well with you, man. Let's see here. JPTV3 says, I've been thinking about collecting some Yamahas. I feel that. William Oates says he's been itching for an updated RS7000 with current tech and sounds. Man, I'm not sure if they'll ever come around to doing that, because I think their samplers have such a, I would say, more of a cult following to a degree. It's not, they don't really have like the sampler grooveboxes that everybody talks about, especially in this community. But yeah, RS7000 is interesting. It's definitely a device that I saw some people freak over time, and they got some interesting stuff. It had some interesting workflow concepts. Beast by Rossi says, and it has a great keyboard. I assume you're talking about the Motif ES, which I would highly agree. It has one of the best keypads I've ever used, and I've used quite a bit of MIDI controllers. If you look at my channel, man, I've had like the history of my channel. I've had so many different MIDI controllers. It's crazy. Like I've had some of the more obscure ones that people don't talk about. Like back in the day, like 2005, 2006, I was messing with the CME stuff. Now CME people know now because of like a lot of their Bluetooth stuff, but back then I was using, like they promised to have one of the best keypads on the market at that time for MIDI controllers. It was the CME UF series, and it was a good keypad, horrible drivers, so I had to get rid of it. And then I had other stuff like the Novation Remote SL. I had that one. That's a great keypad for a MIDI controller as well. But realistically, the Yamaha has been the king for me. Like just the key action is phenomenal to me. So I really like it for that. That's why I still use it as a MIDI controller too. It's just, it feels more comfortable for me. I know a lot of people have used the rack, the Motif ES rack. I know the homie Boomer has it. So I know a lot of people use that, but the key bed is a different level. And what I'm talking about tonight actually is more specific to the keyboard, because the Motif ES as a family, there's the rack and the keyboard. The rack is really just about the sounds. The rack is not really about the sampling and the sequencing, versus the keyboard is a full-on workstation, so you get the sequencer, sampler, and the traditional Motif sounds. So I think what I would like to do first is just kind of talk about my initial impression of the of Logic Pro 10.5. I had some fun with that, actually. Logic Pro 10.5 really kind of closed the gap between it and, I would say, most modern DAW environments, because I think for a long time Logic was lacking, especially within the domain of samplers. Logic relied heavily on a very dated sampler called the EXS24. They also had Ultrabeat, which a lot of people didn't know could sample as well. Ultrabeat is kind of like a hybrid thing. It does kind of like some drum synthesis, but you can load your own samples into it, and a lot of people don't talk about that. I won't really get too deep into that today, but Logic was missing a lot of the modern sampling capabilities of, say, like Ableton or FL Studio, or any of the more modern sampler, or any of the more modern DAWs that include a sampler that has time stretch and just quick editing capabilities and whatnot. So, Logic 10.5 really just closed the gap. Their new samplers are amazing. They have the quick sampler, which is kind of like for you to throw a single sample in, and you can either like play it across the keyboard pitched, or you can slice or whatever, right? And it's an amazing workflow compared to what you got with the EXS24. And then on top of that, I think one of the big things that Logic was missing outside of that type of sampler was really more of a grid-based drum sampler, so to speak. I think for a long time, battery was kind of like people's go-to in Logic. People use battery to load up their drums and sequence and all that. And on my old system, I still have that type of setup. So my main system is kind of an older system, and I still use like battery inside of Logic, because it was kind of like the de facto drum sampler. I've owned battery since like 2006. So when I started to transition to using Logic, battery was it. But now with this drum machine designer, oh man, it really covers a lot of ground in terms of abilities with drum sampling. It has like full envelope control, and all the different playback modes you would expect for a drum sampler, and it's got that whole grid layout just like battery would, or battery does have. It's a pretty interesting sampler. The thing that I really enjoyed about it actually is that it has the ability to record. This is actually a big deal for me personally, because a lot of software samplers over time, they didn't really sample. You could load a sample in terms of like, I can go to a file menu or a file browser and load up a WAV file, or I could drag and drop a WAV file. But a lot of the software samplers lost that ability to record a sample. Battery doesn't have it for sure. Contact doesn't have it. EXS24 doesn't have it. I mean, a lot of samplers that are on that in this virtual domain are about drag and drop. And I remember one of the early ones that was able to do that type of like recording, sample recording. I don't remember if it was Machine first or Reason, because they both had that ability pretty early. I would say, it seems like about 10 years each now. But I remember when Reason got it, because I'm a Reason user as well. It blew my mind that they finally implemented sample recording into this software, and I couldn't imagine that no one questioned that in the past. I think that for the most part, you probably had people that were like, okay, well, I got my sample library and I'm gonna just load samples up, drag and drop, or load them from the file browser. But then I think intuitively, if you are using a sampler to chop up records and whatnot, it's like, well, I have to record my sample in either a DAW or 2-track recorder or something else first, and then save it as a file and then load it up into my samplers. And that workflow works. I mean, you can do it like that. But the idea of being able to record directly in real time, so if I got like a record player or something, or, I'm going to refer to my classic video of the iPod or the iPhone or whatever, but you can record off of some type of medium that has audio and record it directly into the sampler. Machine and Reason were some of the first that I saw on the software domain that really took that next step. But now Logic's drum machine designer actually has that capability as well. So I was very impressed. Now, I think the workflow is kind of a little quirky. It's not as straightforward as I would like. But I think the fact that you have the option of drag and drop or recording audio from your audio interface makes it a pretty convincing sampler for a DAW. The fact that it's built in, you don't have to use, additional plugins, VSTs or whatnot. I think now Logic is getting to that place where it's now much more competitive. It's entered at least this decade, I would say, especially when you combine that with a lot of the new sequencing capabilities. It's got the new step sequencer, kind of like, it's kind of a shot at FL, to be honest. It kind of goes into that direction where it's like, yeah, this is kind of competitive. If you need to be able to sequence your drums like you would in FL, Logic Pro X 10.5 now has that. And then, of course, this whole pattern-based sequencing that Logic offers, I think it's a pretty convincing setup now. So this is very early impressions for me, but I really enjoyed my time using it, and I'm going to be digging into it some more over the next couple weeks. So I'm not going to sit up here and just say everybody needs to go get Logic 10.5 or whatever. Most of you guys, if you guys got a modern system, you probably got it already. You've used it. I'm just giving you a little bit of my thoughts on it more so, because that's kind of what I've been messing with, is just checking out some of this new stuff, installing some new stuff on my other machine. So, what do y'all think about it? If y'all have used it already, let me know your thoughts as well. I'd love to hear, I actually would like to hear what other producers in this on this function are using in terms of their DAWs, because I know everybody uses something different, and I don't do a lot of DAW videos because I know it's just like everybody has their own preference with that. But I've been a Logic user for so long now, so it was very exciting for me when they finally came out with this particular update. Let's see here. Creative Sound, what's going on with you, bro? Thanks for joining. Let's see here. Milton Foster says, what's the difference between pattern loops and regular MIDI loops? I'm trying to understand what context you mean. Are you saying that in the context of a specific DAW? I expand on that a little bit, Milton. Um, let's see. Creative Sounds has been using Logic for many years until the launch of Pro X, and now it's growing on me again. I feel that, man. I feel that. So, well, yeah, let me know what y'all using in here. Um, I think for me, Logic is not perfect, and I think if you're more into like quickly stretching and warping samples and whatnot, Ableton has already established itself as the king of that. I mean, we on this channel we've been talking about Ableton for over 10 years now, so there's no secret. Ableton is the one for the warp capabilities and the quick loop recording and whatnot. But for me, one of the big reasons that I like Logic personally is because it allows me to get more of a recording workflow that I'm more comfortable with. Quickly being able to instantiate new tracks or duplicate tracks, and the way that its transport behaves is much more comfortable for me. I'm the type of guy that likes to move around in the transport using key commands and whatnot. One of the things I didn't like about Ableton, especially Push, was that it didn't really focus on navigation in the arrangement view. That was a big turn off for me, because I like being able to like quickly move without using the mouse. I like key commands and whatnot. In Logic, I got my key commands down where I can quickly move to different bars and whatnot. So that's kind of my workflow. And I just like the way that the track arm behaves in Logic. It's quicker. I don't have to click to do something. I can just move to the next track, and it locks in. Obviously, things like take recording and whatnot are much easier, or actually you can't do it in Ableton. There's no take recording in Ableton. So that's kind of like why I like Logic, because the recording is just more comfortable and more fluid, but it doesn't have this this pattern, or it didn't traditionally have the pattern recording. So Milton Foster says you were talking about 10.5 and they introduced pattern loops alongside the new step sequencer. So in Logic 10.5 you can specify working with pattern loops or MIDI regions. So my impression is that pattern loops is a answer to Ableton Live Session View. So Ableton Live Session View allows you to record independent length loops into the sequencer, irrespective of a linear timeline. And it's a great way to record when you're jamming, especially like if you just want to like throw an idea, like here's a one bar shaker loop, and then I add a 2-bar kick, and then I add a 2-bar snare, and then we add an 8-bar bass line, and I can do all of this stuff without changing anything on the timeline. So to me, that was one of the biggest and most powerful aspects of the Ableton Live workflow, was that it allows you to record like that in real time without stopping the sequencer. That's a very important thing, especially if you are live performing. And I think that's kind of like the idea initially for Ableton Live, is that it is a live performance tool as well, but it just gives you the ability to kind of work on a DAW outside of this whole linear timeline approach that most classic DAWs provide. FL has always had that pattern-based approach as well. So I'm not going to say Ableton was the only one that had that, but I will say that FL's concept was a little bit different in the sense that it wasn't so much designed for continuous live recording. FL's was kind of more stop and go in some ways, and Ableton Live was just that one where you could just start jamming out and like you would have a lot of fun, not even thinking about where stuff goes in the timeline. So that's why the push, I know the push didn't really have a lot of the functionality to control the timeline or the arrangement view, because it's focused on being able to control the session view, which is like the pattern loops inside of Logic. So Logic is essentially giving you access now to this ability to record without thinking about linear time. You can then convert your pattern loops into like different scenes or segments of your song and then trigger those and play those out in real time and perform them directly into the DAW and create a sequence or create an arrangement. That's kind of like the workflow for when you're using pattern loops or like the session view inside of Ableton. So hopefully that answers the question there. Let's see here. What else y'all talking about? Beast by Rossi says Logic is trying to grab FL and Ableton users for sure. Yeah, they definitely are. I don't think they're going to be able to. I think it's more, to me at least, it's more of a play to try to keep the remaining users that they have. And I'm not saying they got like a small amount of users, but I think this is really to safeguard them from losing a lot of users that are interested in what all the hoopla is about, from all the FL Studio and Ableton users and even Studio One users, really. I think this is them trying to protect their audience, and it makes sense. It's long overdue. I don't really see any FL Studio producers going into Logic. I don't see it. There's a lot of little things, little quirks about FL Studio that make it complete in its own right. For the for the Ableton users, same thing. I just don't see them going, especially if you're kind of locked into the whole push device. I don't see you going to Logic, but I think they, FL is trying to protect themselves ultimately and trying to make sure that they have still an audience that will use their software. Okay, cool, Milton. I'm glad that helped. So here's what I want to do. I want to switch gears a little bit and get into this other topic, which was the Motif ES sampler. So I'm gonna switch screens here so we can look at that a little bit. Boom. So let me know if y'all can see now. The Motif should be on screen now. I want to get into this because it's just interesting, and I think it might hopefully like at least inspire some of y'all that still have one, and if you don't, then you might be looking for one to kind of see what you can get out of it. But can y'all see the Motif straight? Everything cool there? I think y'all can see it. So I'm gonna have to move this mic over a little bit now. So give me a moment. All right, so we are now looking at the old Motif ES. That's the ES6. So now I want to get into the sampling thing because the sampler to me is underrated. When we start talking about samplers, I think samplers kind of get used for a few different purposes, but one of the main purposes that people tend to use samplers for is to impart some type of sonic characteristic on a audio signal. People use it for like the tone or the warmth of certain samplers. You always hear this in the community, like, yeah, this sampler sounds warmer, or this sampler is this and that and all that kind of thing, right? I think another reason that people tend to use certain samplers is because of the built-in effects that it has. So, you know, you see a lot of people, especially like in the hip hop community, people talk about things like the SP404, not really because of the sequencer, but more so because of the resampling capabilities and the effects that you can use and all that kind of stuff. So for me, the Motif actually checks a couple of boxes that I didn't expect. I mean, I used the sampler back in the day for different tasks, but I've been digging into it a little bit deeper now. So the thing is, people don't talk about the Motif in terms of a sound manipulation engine. And I think we should consider it a sound manipulation engine as well because of the multitude of effects that it has in it. It has a ton of effects. Like, you know, like I said, you hear people talk about the SP404 and all that, but the Motif has its own set of effects, and it's actually quite significant amount of effects. You know, you could kind of use it as you would certain types of multi-effects pedals and multi-effects boxes. So I think that's kind of what I want to explore tonight, is just kind of looking at some of that stuff just to spark some ideas and whatnot. There's a couple different sampler modes on the Motif. The first mode is the first mode I'll talk about is like the sampler in the pattern mode, because I think that's the main one that I primarily used when I first started, was like the one that's in the pattern mode. So essentially the idea is you could record audio in time. You could record like an audio track directly into the Motif, or you could, you know, sample directly into one of the tracks and create either a slice pattern or something like that. Or you could resample. That was kind of the other thing in pattern mode. So here's what I'm gonna do. Like, let's get into this this pattern-based workflow first. So, and I'm gonna just actually play with the sequencer on the unit just so we can have more context. All right, so I'm gonna pull up an instrument. We're just gonna go off the cuff here. So I'm gonna pull up a Rhodes instrument. Let's see here. Boom. So we got a Rhodes instrument. So with the Motif, you know, because it's got the internal sequencer, you can set up a sequence and, you know, start working. So I'm gonna just set up a chord progression real quick using the sequencer just to get a foundation started. So let's see here. Okay. All right, so let's see. Get a little tempo cracking. Okay. So I might kind of drop in and out because the position of the mic, I might better get it closer, but if you can't hear me for some reason, just let me know. Play with this mic position a little bit more. Sorry about that if it's rumbling in your ear, but yeah, we're improvising here. All right, so let's see. Okay, let's do that. Oh, hold on. Let's, real time, buddy. All right, right, so that's like a little sequence real quick. Just, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna try to make sense of it. But so now I got a progression. I can go into the integrated sampler, hit the integrated sampling button. So the interesting thing about it is like you got the ability to choose a target. If you guys need me to get zoom closer on this, please let me know as well, because I know it's not zoomed all the way in, and I can probably zoom it a little bit better, but we're just kind of talking about it from more of a theoretical approach more so. But yeah, I am now in the integrated sampler mode. It has like a target track. So I'm gonna say, okay, the target track, meaning the track that you want the sample to go to. I'm gonna put it on track 2, and then key bank. You know, this is kind of more, I think this is one of the main places where the Motif ES becomes a little bit more strange for people that are used to MPCs, because it deals with these key banks as opposed to like this sample goes to that pad, this sample goes to that pad. The key bank kind of determines what root key the sample belongs to, and you can have multiple samples in a key bank for that matter. But I'm gonna use C3 just for the purpose of this demonstration. And so here's where to me it gets interesting. You got different sample types, right? So you got the ability to sample, which is just directly just record a sample without doing anything extra to it. You got sample plus note. Sample plus note means that it will sample the whole passage and then create like a trigger note essentially within the sequencer, so that it triggers the sample in time. So it's kind of like a start marker for the sample. So it says, okay, the sample, it's a MIDI note that triggers the sample so that it plays in time with your sequence. So those are kind of your options. And then there's the slice and sequence. So slice and sequence, you know, it's kind of like the whole, some of you might be old enough to remember like the whole recycle stuff or whatever, where, you know, you would take a sample and recycle, and then you would do your slice markers or whatnot, and that would add also MIDI notes to the file, so that when you put it inside like Reason or some other Rex compatible software, it would play back the file in time. So it's kind of like beat slicing. So this is what slice and sequence is. It creates the slices. It'll create some slices, and then it'll also add the MIDI triggers essentially, so that it can play in time. I'm just gonna do a regular sample right now. I'm not gonna do anything like that, just so we can kind of dig into it a bit more. Source, you got AD, which is the actual audio, and we'll get into that in the next part of this. But for now, I'm gonna use resample. So that's what's cool about this, is that resample means it samples from basically the master output of the board. So I'm at resample now. Now, even cooler to me on the Motif ES, and I think this is where you start getting into what makes certain samplers interesting. The Motif allows you to it allows you to specify the frequency, or the sampling frequency. So it defaults to 44.1, but I can also go to 22K, 11K, 5.5K, and that's it. But I mean, I think we'll do a couple rounds of this so we can kind of see some of the differences here. I'm gonna start with just the 44.1, and then we'll progress into some of the lower rates as well. So I'm gonna hit record now. Let's change the threshold down, and then we're gonna hit record. So now it's in standby, and now I'm gonna hit play, and it's gonna start recording. So I'm gonna do that again because I think my level is a little bit hot on that. Let's cancel that for a second. Let's go signal flow here. Let's go back here for a second. That's weird. Well, we gonna do the little struggle for a second. Let's try that again. Not sure why it's recording like that now. Oh, I see. My bad. That's me. All right, so we're gonna record it like that. Boom. I think that's it. All right, so now I think we got it. I think we got it. That was my bad. Sorry about that. I had the recording kind of set up funky. So let's do this again. All right, so now we're ready to go. Record. Let's get the level right. There he is. So my trigger level is at 7, so that should be perfectly fine. And then we can... All right. Not sure why it's recording like that still though. So let's go back to this for a second though. We're in pattern now. Sorry for this technical weirdness, but we're gonna fix that. So we're gonna go back to mixing for a second. Let's go edit, job, pattern. All right, so let's go undo, replace record, enter. All right, let's do that again. Sorry about that. We're just gonna record straight, just so we can get the whole thing going. All right, so here we go. Time. I love it. Uh-huh. right, so now we're gonna go back, and I'm gonna turn off actually the master effect here, or the system effect, because that might be giving me some issues too. All right, so now we're gonna go to the record. Destination track is gonna be 2. All right, so let's record that now. There we go. There we go. All right. All right, stop that. Okay, so here's the thing with the ES now. So my sample is actually on track 2. So this is track 2 here. Now with the sampler, what you can do essentially is you can change the sample range. So the sample range could be like, if I want this sample to go from, if I want this sample range to go from this part of this low part of the keyboard to the high part of the keyboard, I can hit keyboard here and set the low point, and then move to the upper range and set the high point. So now, when I go back to the pattern sequencer, so now the keyboard has pretty much access to the sample at different pitches. It doesn't do any time stretch or anything like that. Now, what's interesting to me about that is in this mode, I actually don't prefer sampling in this mode, because in this mode, you're very limited with the sample. Like, I can sample like this, I can chop in this mode, but if I want to get really deep into like effects or anything like that, I'm limited. But this is at 44.1. Now, the interesting thing is with this sampler, if I go back here, I can change the sample rate to 22, and 22 is going to sound quite a bit different actually, and I'm going to use the same pattern. Let's see. Let's go back to pattern. Let's mute that one. All right, so then we're going to go back to the integrated sampler. Okay, so we're going to sample at on track 2, or actually let's go track 3. Track 3. And then it's going to be C3 still, and it's going to be resample. What I'm going to do is now we're going to sample at 22K. So I'm going to hit record here, and then we're going to play the sequence. All right, so I got that now. Same thing, if I go to edit now, I can set my key range here. So I'm gonna set the key range. Let's go, upper is gonna be boom, and then the lower is gonna be boom, just so I can have access to it at different pitches, right? So then we go to pattern here. So that's at our 22 hertz versus, let's see, this one, I got both samples up now. So I got on track 2, and then I got track 3. Now I can keep reducing this actually. So like I can go now to say track 4 and go 11. But I think, like I said, at this point, this particular mode of sampling is not necessarily the most flexible, because what's missing from this mode is actually the ability to add effects to the chain. The effects actually come in on the voice mode. So I'm gonna go actually to the voice mode, because I think that's the more interesting mode. Like the Motif here is kind of set up where you can just, like I said, quickly record some audio and add it to a sequence. But the voice mode is the real magic for me. That's where you really get access to the sampler. So if you hit voice mode now, it activates kind of a different aspect of the sampler. So if I go to integrated sampling now, destination is different now, because with the destination, it is now about a destination voice or a destination instrument that it should go to, as opposed to a destination track. So like a preset or some other area that's in voice mode that you can kind of send the sample to. For now, I'm not going to choose a destination. Let's see, we're going to choose waveform 5, which is kind of like the way that this sampler tries to organize things in terms of like waveform sets. Almost, it's not so much like, hey, this is, you know, sample 1, sample 2, sample 3. It just kind of has more of this like waveform architecture that means a couple of different things. I'm gonna go to source now. At first we were doing resample. I'm gonna actually sample A to D this time. We're gonna sample audio directly into this. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm gonna change on my Apollo, actually, I need to set it up so I can get audio signal into it. So I'm gonna do that. And let's see, I'm gonna set up a external synthesizer actually to sample into this Motif. Let's see here. All right, can y'all hear that? All right, so that's another synth that I have that's just routed directly into the Motif at this point. And I'm gonna turn up the gain a little bit on that. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna set this up to record, and I'm going to, again, let's just go ahead and sample at 22K just to start off, because that's kind of like it's a hi-fi sound anyhow. So let's just set this up so it records at 22K. All right, so then I'm gonna still use C3 as my root note here, and then we're just gonna hit record. Now this time it doesn't really matter. It's not so much about like keeping in time. This is just straight sampling now. All right, so now I got the sample in here. Let's see here. Let's turn to track. So it's already across the keyboard. I'm gonna go ahead and say okay. We're gonna keep that, and then now here's what we're gonna do. If we go to let's see, edit here, we can change the key range for that sample. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did in the previous one. So we're gonna say key range is gonna be, let's go boom, bottom, and then at the top. So we got key range across the keyboard now. All right, and then if we go back to voice mode, right now, the way it's set up is there's actually, you know, I can assign this to a user preset essentially. So I'm gonna go to another user preset. I actually have one kind of set up for this kind of approach. So it's the keyboard sampler one right now. So the keyboard sampler one is kind of something that started from an initialized patch, and you can just put whatever user sample you want into it. So now I'm on the keyboard sampler, which is basically a initialized preset. And now I'm going to go into the edit mode and then go to what's called like the part editor. And now I can go to the wave banks and select the wave that I want to use for this part. So let's see here. Let's go back to integrated sampling for a moment. Edit. All right. And I think need to put local control on. Yeah. All right. So then you hear the different samples in here. So this, where's this one at now? Integrated sampler, edit. Oh, I see. That's why it's not playing. It didn't accept my key range. Boom. All right, so that should be it now. There it is. So this is that sample, that initial sample at like 22K. So it starts to get some artifacts as you pitch it down. But even at the original rate, it still has some interesting character to it now. So, I mean, at 22K, it's already sounding pretty interesting, like in terms of texture. But like I said, with the Motif ES, what gets interesting to me about it also is the idea that you can also add different effects on top of this. So if I go back into the editor now and then go to, there's filters in here. So like, here's an example of some of the filters. This is like a low pass filter. Let's go cut off. So it's got, that sort of stuff going on in it. But then it's got like some interesting effects in here. And I'm gonna go to the effects more so. So right now the chain is set up, oh, go back. The chain is set up where it's a compressor and auto pan actually. That's kind of interesting. But let me turn effect B off. So it's got two effects inside the Motif. Two effects or two inserts per track, essentially. So right now I got compressor on, but there's other interesting things like, let's go here to maybe a chorus, for example. Or what is this one? The Celeste. All right, so and then you can edit that stuff. You can get into like the speed of it. Right, so I mean, all of the effects in here are pretty editable. Let's see here. Let's get into some other stuff. Flanger. And then, I mean, of course, if I go to a different key now, it'll get even like weirder in terms of texture and stuff. So it gets kind of interesting, but then like, let's see, some of the other stuff that I find interesting, like, yeah, the auto pan is cool in here. That's a cool one. Rotary is also kind of cool in here. All right, so that's that. What else is in here that's cool? The distortions are actually pretty interesting as well in here. Like there's a lot of amp models and distortions that get used for different things. So let me, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So that's like an overdrive. Now I can do like different degrees of overdrive on the net. And then it's got different, within that particular effect, it's got different models. So it's like there's a fuzz. So that got kind of deep. That got interesting. What else is there in there? The tube. There's tube in here. All right. So, and then I think another thing that we don't talk about a lot in here is like there's some kind of odd stuff like pitch change in here as well. So that's kind of cool. Or I can go 12 semitones down. Right, so that's interesting. Wah-wahs in here. I don't know wah-wah to work on this. Another interesting thing it has in here is like lo-fi filters. So here's an example. So this is already, I mean, the sample we already did, we already sampled it at 22K, but then like you can further kind of distort it or whatever using other lo-fi filters in here. Like here's a radio one. And then you can change the sampling frequency with that. Right, so that's interesting. Then there's a telephone. All right, and then I mean it goes on in terms of like different effects in here, but I think that's to me what makes this sampler quite a bit interesting in terms of how it can be used as a processor. I think in the voice mode, it becomes a bit more powerful than in that sequencer mode. The sequencer mode kind of has a rough idea of like how you would use it for like sequencing a beat or a track or whatever. But when you get in voice mode, you can really start getting into like different aspects of it. There's some other weird stuff in here, like in terms of effects, like here's the slice. So that's interesting. Isolator. What else is in here? voice cancel. Yeah. So I mean, it gets kind of deep in that, and then you can again chain the effects, so you can have that plus, like, say if I wanted to do a reverb or something, or if I want to do like a delay. Right? So I mean, it gets kind of cool. I mean, I thought it was interesting. Sorry for like the fumbling and the other mode. Like I said, I don't use that mode as much, but this particular mode I think gets really cool. And then, you know, of course, it's a workstation instrument, so it has all the other stuff that you can do on top of just like effects and resampling and whatnot. You can still use some of the workstation parameters to affect it and, you know, modulate it and whatnot. So it becomes pretty interesting. So yeah, I'm back to the other sample now. But yeah, y'all kind of get the picture. Hopefully that was kind of like at least a good taste of what you could do with it. I can get into some other stuff maybe on a different time where I got it a bit more structured. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to go through that a little bit. You know, like I said, it's all off the cuff, you know what I'm saying? So hopefully that got some people thinking about it, at least in terms of what you can do with it. Yeah, it's not necessarily the snappiest or fastest sampler to work on, as you saw some of the stuff I was doing, like, okay, what's he doing here? Why is that messed up? But ultimately, I think it's been something. It's an aspect of the motif that I haven't mastered, and I think that's the clear part for me. And I think that was why that even this exercise tonight was important, because as long as I've had the motif, I feel like, I got tired of using certain aspects of it, but it's a much deeper instrument than just the workstation part of it. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that you got so many different things that you can do with the instrument like this, where you can continue to find value, you can continue to find ways to, use it and get some type of result that could be beneficial to you. So, that's why I'm continuing to use it, not, like I said, in the same capacity that I used to use it, but more so as a sampler, because it has a lot of things that the MPC doesn't do for me, and it has a lot of things that other samplers in my studio don't do. So because of that, it's valuable. And I think when you combine its sampler with the different effects and all that kind of stuff, it gives me some options, and it gives me some things that I can bounce between different samplers to get an interesting workflow and interesting results. So hopefully that kind of was something that you got some value out of seeing. I know it's an old sampler. It's not considered a classic sampler like a ASR 10 or EPS or anything like that. But for me personally, the way I'm using that sampler is not so much about it's not really so much about being able to sequence off of the motif at this point, even though you guys kind of saw me sequencing, like you guys saw me sequencing MIDI on it, obviously. But the thing is, I would just use it for its sampler and effects engine to resample things and then throw it back into some other sampler that I'm more comfortable with, whether that's the MPC or machine or something else. So to me, it's just it becomes a new part of the workflow in a different way. And I think, you know, that's the beauty of having a hardware studio, especially, is the ability to be able to sample different sources within the studio and make them work together in different ways. I'm a big proponent of working like that. I'm still, you know, I'm not a producer that is all hardware or all software. I don't subscribe to anything like that. You know, this week I've kind of been bouncing between a few different things because I like to explore. I like to get different ideas, and I know my music sounds different on different devices. That's the reality of it. You know, I'll play you some stuff I was doing on the MPC using some of them sounds you just heard me messing with. Like, this is kind of like a quick bounce of something that I started writing this week, just so you can kind of see. This is more of like a hardware-based workflow. It's kind of like MPC plus a couple of hardware synthesizers and the iPad. So check this out. Yeah. So that's kind of like a vibe I came up with the other day on the MPC 4000. So, I mean, yeah, I'm still kind of in between stuff, but then like last night, I felt like working on Logic. So that was kind of the vibe, you know, the other day. But I'm in between all this stuff. I like to use all this kind of stuff, man. So I don't limit myself to like one platform or one domain. All of it can be useful. I'm really enjoying, you know, where I'm at in terms of like creativity at this point, just in terms of my thinking now, because I think for a long time, we all have different producers that we look up to and kind of emulate it to begin learning. But I think now I'm at a place where, like, yes, I still have some of my OG influences embedded into that, but I think, you know, where I'm at now, I'm just thinking a lot differently. My approach is a lot different, so I don't necessarily rely on a lot of the old comforts that I used to rely on. You know, when I first started, I kind of honestly, I patterned my studio after DJ Battlecat and DJ Quick. You know, that's who I saw, you know, videos of, and I saw the stuff that they were using. I kind of patterned my stuff off after that, and I tried to figure out a workflow like based off of what I was hearing or thought I was hearing them do. But over time, I think if you're growing, you should start to look at other or get other influences, look at other ideas and approaches and incorporate all of it. So then you can have a more well-rounded sound and you can start to find what is uniquely yours. Like, what are some things that you could say, yeah, that's a, you know, whatever your name is. Like that's a Beats by Rossi, or that's a William Oates, or for me it's like that's a Jay Myrax thing right there. So there's certain aspects of it where I'm like, okay, yeah, I have unique things that I like to do that I know that I've got from other places at this point, and I'm incorporating it in my own way. But I think it's important not to limit yourself as a music producer. And like I said, don't be so comfortable with just looking at producers that look like you. However you take that, because I think I learned a lot of different concepts and ideas from producers that are in all areas of the world, and they're coming with different ideas, and there's different cultural influences that they're drawing from to create their music and push their music. So I think there's always things that you can extract from that if you're creative. So yeah, that's kind of my little spiel. I'm gonna get into this chat room now, see what y'all talking about in here. Appreciate everybody that liked the beat. If you haven't already done so, make sure you like the video, by the way. Appreciate everybody that's stuck around and fumbled, explored, whatever we want to call it, through the Motif ES. I hope you guys got some value out of that. What's new with y'all? I love to hear what's going on with y'all as well. Anything new, any new gear grabs, any new interests or ideas that you want to talk about. That I think that's the beauty. That's the part of the producer function that I really want to enable more of, is just talking about stuff and communicating with each other. And, if you have any questions for me, of course, feel free to ask me questions. I'm here to be a service as well if you guys have questions. But love to hear back from you guys about what you're looking at, what you're working on, etc. Let's see. William O said need 2003 Snoop. I feel that. Yeah, I definitely get what you're talking about there. Beats by Rossi said he came up on an ESI 32 last week for $100. What do you think about it? Is it interesting to you? Like, have you figured out how you want to use that? Because I think it's a pretty interesting. I had an ESI 2000 back in 2003 actually. So that was pretty interesting. At that time, I wasn't deep with that sampler, so I mean, I was using it for sampling CDs actually, and that's pretty rare now. We don't really talk about sample CDs too much, but back in that day, Kontakt wasn't fully king yet in terms of these keyboard style samplers. So like, yeah, I bought the ESI 2000 as a rack sampler so I can load up some of the more higher quality sample CDs. That's another interesting thing we don't talk about a lot in terms of samplers, is like the sample CDs as well, because some of the sample CDs were pretty good. I still have some sample CDs, like Akai format sample CDs, more for like keys and whatnot, and those can be pretty cool for a different vibe. It's not really like the VST vibe. I think kind of like the sample CDs are the predecessor for a lot of the VSTs on the market today. Let's see here. Locust M, what's going on with you? He says, what's the best Lindrum VST alternatives? I'm gonna defer to the community on that, man. I got some Lindrum samples, but as far as like a VST, I couldn't really tell you what the best VST emulation is for that. Maybe the community can help with that. I really defer to y'all on that. Beats by Rossi, question: are event monitors a decent brand in your opinion? So, yeah, they are. I don't know if you're talking about like the 2020s or what particular model you're talking about, but I believe they are a pretty quality brand. I want to say what did I have back in the day? Because I know I had some. Um, I'll tell you in a second. I think I had, like, which one are you talking about? I'd love to see what you're talking about. Because, yeah, the classics were the 2020s. Everybody that I know had 2020s at some point back in the day. So I think those were good ones. Pretty classic reference monitor. And then I think they have the TR8. That's another one. So which one are you talking about? Oh, that's the one I had. I had the I was trying to remember the model. It was the ASP. I had the ASP 6s. That was back in 2007. I sold them because I fell on hard times and needed to sell them. But they were dope monitors. The ASP 6s. So yeah, I like the brand. I've been kind of on Genelex for a long time, and I got the ASP 6s as a replacement for my Genelex. Well, they weren't my Genelex. The story with me and Genelec, by the way, is that the reason I got Genelex was not because I could afford to buy them, but I was doing some sound work for Yamaha, doing some demo work actually. Because my story with Yamaha goes back to being more of a demo producer and then a sound designer later. So I was doing demos for the Motif ES rack. So I have actually a demo in there built in. But at that time, I didn't have like really great monitors. So Yamaha let me borrow some of their Genelec 1031s. And boy, oh boy, was that a huge upgrade in my setup. Man, Genelec 1031s kind of changed the game for me. So from that point, like Yamaha let me borrow those indefinitely. So I thought, and then by about 2006, I had to return them. And I was like, oh man, missing them Genelecs. And I couldn't afford Genelecs. So I got the Events, which were still a great monitor, Event ASP 6s. Right now, I have Genelec 1030, which is the smaller version, but it's still the Genelec sound. And I'm a big fan of the Genelec sound, not necessarily for mixing. I think over the years, I like it more for monitoring. It's a great monitor. It's a great playback sound. I say for mixing, I like to use I like to use speakers that are closer to what most people would listen on. So I try to incorporate a lot of different speakers and earbuds and whatnot when I'm mixing. That's just me though. Let's see here. Beats by Rossi says he grabbed the Emacs disc images. I feel that. Okay. Oh, yeah. You know what? Shout out to Daydream Sound, by the way. He's definitely, when we want to talk about samplers and like getting down into like the classic samplers and capabilities, he's still the guy to me on YouTube. He's still one of the deepest ones that really has a lot of exposure to a lot of these samplers and can really tell you the ins and outs on it. I think he has like the ASR 10 manuals and a couple other things. Like he's that guy on that. So I know he's not really a Motif guy, so that's why I said let me talk about this Motif, because I know Daydream Sound got all that other stuff kind of on lock. Let's see. CC Funk says, I wish I can find Tony Mason drum sample CDs and a lot of others. I'm not hip to those. I'm definitely not hip to those. That might be a little bit before my time, actually. Sounds interesting, though. Let's see here. Beast by Rossi says he's looking at a pair for 170 with a AKA mic. You mean maybe an AKG mic? I don't know. Seems like a steal, but I can't see the model. Yeah, I would check on the model for that for sure. I would check on the model. Let's see here. CC Funk says he has the Gota Yashiki Groove Activator sample CD who programmed beats for Soul to Soul. Oh, that's dope. See, that's the interesting thing. Like back in the day, you used to have like, it wasn't so much just like producer kits. I mean, there was, I think there was more emphasis on players, drummers and whatnot when we start getting into sample libraries. A lot of that's changed so much today. I think it's become so producer oriented. Like, okay, yeah, I got such and such drum kit, or I got such and such sample pack, and it's more like producers. And I think it's great that producers are looking at ways to leverage their sound and what they make. I think that we still should have some balance in this market too. Like, I do miss getting more of the sample libraries that incorporate like legendary musicians, people that have studied their instrument and play their instrument at a high level, because I think that's one of the key aspects of sampling, is that sampling gives you access, especially like sample libraries, they give you access to instruments and also musicians that you wouldn't easily have access to. And I think it's important that we still have these sample libraries that come from some of like the top players in the world, and not just producers. Not to say producers don't play. A lot of producers play and play very well. I know producers like, Terrace Martin, for example. He's a phenomenal player as well. But I think, on the market right now, you're not seeing as much of that. You're seeing a lot more like, producer loops and whatnot, which, like I said, it's great because producers have their own sound, much more about engineered sounds at this point, different types of textures and things like that. But yeah, I think, what you just mentioned kind of sparked that whole topic for me, because it's like, yeah, you used to have a lot more of the players within the sample CD domain and the sample library domain especially. Let's see here. Roal says, reminds me of the Ensoniq EPS, what is that, 2? First I learned on. That's what's up. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Beats Bar Rossi, I think events are cool, man. I don't know if they would be my go-to for today. Are you trying to flip those, or what's the deal, man? Are you looking for some new monitors, or is that just like a steal that you're trying to just grab off the market real quick? I'm trying to read through what you're saying. So yeah. Let's see here. Locust M says, one of these years I'll get me a replica Lin drum from Roland. Man, I don't know. Roland, they're playing with the sampling market, I guess. If enough people buy the latest groove boxes they made, then someone might come out with, or Roland might come out with a even bigger sampler. Maybe. Who knows? I think a lot of these companies make their decisions based upon the market adoption, and like how many sales did we get from the last time that we did, that type of venture, right? So I think that's the thing. It's like, if we don't support it, they're not going to do it. Markman05 says, I'm not good at playing melodies. I'm better at chopping loops from sample libraries. That's what's up, man. I mean, I think everybody has different forms of artistry, and I think there's nothing wrong with being more of a sampler as a musician, because there's a high level of artistry that gets into sampling. I think as you get deeper into how you manipulate samples and how you interpret using samples, I think it allows you to flex different skill sets, which also can help your music stand out. And I think sampling should be respected as a form of musicianship. I think from my perspective, I think sampling becomes less about musicianship when it's just simply about snatching loops and using them as is without any type of manipulation. But I think, people use samples for different things, right? Some people use samples to get an idea started, So it's more of a foundation that helps them to get inspired, and then they might at some point remove the sample and just continue composing and creating around this initial idea. So for some people it's a starter, and for some people it's a predominant part of the music. And I think it should be about really creativity at the end of the day. I think there's no right or wrong way to use anything, and I think there's nothing wrong with not being good at playing melodies as an electronic music creator. I think that if you have a desire to want to get into keyboard playing, then it is it's wise to start investing in learning how to play the keys. And there's a lot of great resources out there. I think for me, I always was interested in playing keys, so that's why for me, playing the keyboard is such an important part of my production workflow. I think without that, I don't feel like I'm doing the thing that I want to do. But not everyone is a keyboard player or is interested in being a keyboard player. For some people, a keyboard is just a means to an end, or some people don't even use keyboards today to create music, and still can create really strong music. I think, yeah, as Ronald J. Fontenot says, it is about melody. I think you have to have a good ear. You have to have a good sense of melody. But whether you create that or not is really a creative choice. I think, like I said, as an electronic musician, there's no rule that says you must create all melodies from scratch. I think you should understand what is a good melody, and know how to use it, and know how to make it stand out in your music. So yeah, that's just my little spiel on that anyhow. Let's see here. He says MSX audio is dope. MSX is dope, man. They got some they got some real musicians within that team. So I think that's the thing. When I say real musicians, I mean people that studied a certain instrument for a long time. So you got drummers. Thank you for correcting me, by the way, Fontano. I didn't know how to say that. Thank you, appreciate that. But yeah, MSX got some real players in there. They got some real drummers in there. They've worked with some real bass players and guitar players and singers. They got a good variety of like musicians that they work with. So I give they get a lot of respect from me. I don't hate samples. I think samples are just a creative tool. I think for the most part, like I said, it's about your creativity. I don't have anything against anyone that uses a sample to get creative or inspired. Let's see here. Locust M says, what made me get better as a keyboard player, I learned to play my favorite songs. That's critical. That's a big part of how we learn music in general. Like, I mean, if you take any type of music lessons, theory, or whatever, you're going to use someone else's music as a foundation to learn the basics and learn even the more advanced stuff. A lot of that stuff can be learned through other people's music. So I think, starting with songs that you like and learning that is super important. I think that's that's the one of the strongest ways to get better as a musician in general, is to be willing to listen to those that came before you and learn what they did. Not so much just to be able to copy or emulate what they do, but more so to understand what they did. And then you can, after a while of implementing and practicing that stuff, you can start to use it in your own ways in your own music, and you can create some of their melodies and voicings and other types of ideas, and use that to build your own songs. I do it all the time. I'm not gonna say I'm a virtuoso keyboard player because I'm not. I'm a functional keyboard player. I'm still growing as a keyboard player, but I think keyboard playing is definitely a big part of how I like to approach it, at least. CC Funk says it's a struggle for me to play keyboards, and recently one of my fingers on my right hand locks up. Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that, dude. Not sure. Are you doing any type of physical therapy or anything for that? I mean, I'm sure there's YouTube videos that may help you to figure out ways to unlock some of that. I mean, there's some cool. I've seen some really interesting YouTube channels like what's this dude's name? Functional Patterns, I think, and Athlean X, and some of these other guys that are really into like the physiology of muscles and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of stuff to be learned from that, but I think you could probably find some answers from some of these like physical therapists even that are on YouTube that may help you to figure out ways to help unlock or stop your muscles from locking up, because a lot of it has to do with our habits. And a lot of us are sitting and we're sedentary for so long that you're bound to have some type of issues. And if you don't have a good ritual of exercise and motion and whatnot and physical training, yeah, it's difficult, man. But I'm sure some of the folks in the chat room might have some advice too. If you haven't, like I said, if you haven't done physical therapy with a doctor, I would say, or a physical therapist, I would recommend you look into that as well. But then secondarily, check out YouTube. There's some great information about that as well, for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, what else is going on, fam? I mean, I don't want to draw this out, but I definitely want to, if anybody else has other questions and whatnot, feel free to comment. Feel free to let me know. But yeah, I've just been trying to stay safe in here for the most part. I'm getting outside once in a while, whatever. But the whole the lockdown that we've been experiencing in California especially, has been a little sobering, because I mean, a lot of the stuff that would normally be open you can't go to and you can't enjoy right now. But it's giving me some time to be in the studio a bit more, and I have no excuse now. I get to dig in and work on my stuff. So I'm very much enjoying that. I hope everybody else is out there is being safe and healthy and whatnot. Even outside of the whole virus thing, I think there's other things that we got to make sure that we focus on, make sure that we stay healthy on all fronts, not just like, okay, I'm protected from COVID-19 or whatever, but more so protecting yourself from other types of injuries and whatnot. So stay active, make sure that you exercise. When things started to get a little crazy, right before actually, I had made a quick run to a sporting goods store and got some weights, and I did that right on time, because once we got locked down, couldn't go to the gym anymore, couldn't do a lot of the other stuff I was used to doing. So yeah, it's important to have some ability to exercise on some level. Make sure that you got even just time to stretch, man. Stretching is such an important part of staying healthy. And, I can't say I'm perfect with that. I definitely got my flaws in that. I've been sitting for 1 hour and 38 minutes now. Let me get my little stretch on real quick. But, the thing is, we sit a lot as producers, so it's important that we stay active. Let's see. Unique the Poet, what's going on? Albuquerque, New Mexico, appreciate you. He says, what's your thoughts on the MPC one? I was going to buy one, but I can't find one in stock. I think it's a very complete entry level groove box. I think it's a very complete entry level device that does a lot for the price. So, you know, at that $600-700 range, I can't tell you anything else that competes to it. I think for the most part, the MPC, the live is kind of like the new standard, I would say. But the MPC one is great. I think for the price. Not to say that it won't be things later that compete with that, but I think right now, if that's what you're on the market for, like especially MPC, it's hard to deny it. That's for sure. I'm a big MPC person myself because the workflow in terms of being able to maneuver around the sequencer, I think that's the biggest part for me that is appealing. Transport especially. That I think that's a big part of it. Like the way I tend to record, you guys kind of saw me recording a little bit on the Motif. The way I can do things on the MPC is a lot more interesting for me because it just allows me to think about it in terms of like writing as opposed to like recording a audio track. I think a lot of other sequencers tend to create a dynamic where you have to get a good take, a perfect take. And not to say that the MPC is not about that, but I think one of the differences is that the way that you can approach getting your take is a little bit more open-ended. Maybe I'm talking theoretical right now, so, and this ain't necessarily about me trying to sell an MPC, but I think just for the sake of discussion, maybe I can get into showing you just a little bit of what I mean by that with the MPC, if you guys don't mind. If you guys got a little bit of time, I just want to show you kind of like what I'm talking about. Let me move this camera over a little bit. All right, sorry about that. I'm just trying to get the camera so we can kind of look at that a little bit, because I think I'm talking theoretical about the MPC right now, but I don't have to do that. We out of range. Hold on. All right, so I think that. Sorry if I'm making any of y'all seasick. So yeah, here's the thing with the MPC that I like. I'm not gonna necessarily make a whole beat with that, but let me move this microphone over a little bit too. All right. So with the MPC, can y'all see that? Is that better? No. That's probably better. All right. So with the MPC, the thing is, when I'm sequencing on it, I tend to approach writing parts a little bit differently than I would on, say, especially like Ableton or even on Core Gadget. The approach is a little bit different. So the thing I like about it is that you have the ability to overwrite and really like overdub record pretty quickly. Let me give you an example of that. So we'll start a new sequence. I'm gonna just put something together quick just for the purpose of the demonstration, so we can kind of get understanding what I'm talking about here. All right, so let's use yeah, that'll work. All right, we'll turn the motif down. All right, so we'll get a tempo going. Okay, so like the first things first is like, for me, tap tempo is always great on the MPC. I love that. Sometimes I know what tempo I want to use, but I think, you know, for the most part, I like using tap tempo. In this case, I just want to get to a quick tempo. The produce market, what's going on, everybody? That's your boy Snipe Young, by the way. For those of y'all that don't know, world-class sound designer, recording engineer, producer, music genius. What's going on, fam? We just in here just talking nerd stuff. So yeah, I'll start with like a 2-bar sequence on the MPC. Let me see. All right, so I'm gonna just get something cracking real quick. Let's do that again. The quantize, snappy, you know what I'm saying? All right, I'm gonna do that one more time. Yeah. So that's one thing. Quantize is snappy. Markman 05, he made the pure drip for machine, right? Yes. Yes. He made pure drip for machine. So he's that guy. All right, so we're gonna record that. So track 2, track 3. All right, track 4. Let me just get some hi-hats cracking, and then we'll kind of be off to the races. I'm gonna turn the quantize off, and we're gonna get some hi-hats going. All right, we'll do that one more time. All right, so a little basic groove, right? Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna actually quickly get into the first thing. Like for me, if I'm using the MPC, I make a 2-bar groove or something, then I'll triple that one. So I'll copy bar 1 and 2, and then paste that 3 times. Boom, we got an 8-bar. All right, so we got that. Now here's the thing. Now I'm gonna go into the instruments, and this is kind of like where the workflow for me and the transport capabilities start to really pay dividends, and also just the track structure for me. Because The reason I like it is because it kind of allows me to kind of piecemeal how I'm writing. And here's what I mean by that. So if I wanted to start off with a little progression on the keys, right? I'm gonna just try to find something here. So we're gonna groove with it for a second. All right. Start with that, right? So this is where the piecemeal comes. Like I can just lay that down, right? And then, okay, so from this point, I'm writing. I don't have the whole chord progression that I want to do. So the reason I like this MPC situation is because the track structure, number one. So I can go to another track, keeping what I just recorded. And then now I'm on another track with the same instrument, right? So here's the thing about that. Now I can kind of layer or continue to build on top of this with what I originally recorded in this groovebox. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because a lot of your grooveboxes that are like 16 tracks or like a limited amount of tracks, they tend to have a structure that does not allow you to record or overdub in a multi-track fashion. So now, like, because the MPC has I think 64 tracks, I can layer, I can still use the instruments, but I can use them in a layered fashion. So I can, like, if I wanted to do that, that's cool. Or if I want, okay. Right, so I can do that. Right? And then I can just continue on. I'm gonna do that on another track and the reason I'm doing it on another track now is because of the CC information. Basically, when I record over, I don't want to mess up the CC information from the previous take because I'm piecemealing it so I can kind of layer it as opposed to recording it on the same track where it might mess up like the sustain pedal action or other things that I may have used. So it's kind of like a little secret or a little cheat in a way It's definitely a cheat, but I'm looking at it more so from the perspective of writing. Like I said, like if I don't write sheet music, but I can still write my ideas on this device using this type of methodology. So now I'm back on another track. So I got that right. I'm just writing pieces now. And I don't normally record everything like this, not this piecemeal, but I'm showing you for reference. This is kind of the idea. So we're kind of like writing a chord progression here, using the MPC and the track structure to do that, to help us. So, I just had that, and then let me see. So I'm gonna go. Let's listen to it. Now I didn't record that, but I'm kind of getting the feel for it. Okay, so we're gonna try that though. I don't like that one. And that's the thing, if I don't like it, okay, I said. Okay, I'm gonna just do that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea for me. Is like being able to move around the sequence like that and build and layer things, because it's kind of like this. I'm kind of treating the sequencer as a sampler, and it's sampling these different chords and different passages. So that's kind of how I use the MPC when I'm writing this. It's kind of sampling MIDI passages that I'm writing on the fly. And once I get a progression written, where it's like, okay, that's not a progression I would have just naturally just came up with, just by just playing on the keyboard. Like, okay. I mean, just coming up with something real quick, I wouldn't have come up with anything like spectacular like that. But I think because I'm able to like sample, like, okay, let me just sample that part, and it's not audio, so it's still flexible. So each track has a different set of progressions or a set of chords that are being sampled, and I can kind of move them around and have flexibility with them now. So that's my approach, and that's one of the reasons why I like it. The other thing is being able to quickly move around in the transport. So like, for example, because the MPC, and I don't think it's in view right now, but the MPC has a pretty proper transport functionality that allows me to move around the sequence using like, the bars, and then there's also the steps. So like if I want to go to bar 2 real quick, it's just, a couple taps, and then I could play start. Or if I want to quickly move to bar 7. right? So just being able to quickly move around the transport, I think is, for me, it's important, because as you start to build out the sequence, like if I now triple this and I want to move around the sequence, like I want to go to bar 9 now, or if I want to go to, bar 17 now, I can quickly do that with the transport functionality. So I think that's a really cool feature of the MPC in terms of the hardware, is having the transport section that allows you to do that. The record overdub, that's the other thing. Like, for me, I'm way quicker with the record overdub, or overwrite record and overdub methods that the MPC allows you to do. Now, this layered approach I just showed you is kind of like a alternative for me to doing that, because like I said, when I'm using especially a sustain pedal, you have issues with CCs getting destroyed as you do overdub. So you got to be careful with, like, okay, did I press the sustain pedal at the right punch in point or whatever? So that kind of stuff like that, right? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I work with the MPC. And that's a reason that I like using it as a device, because it just allows me to do that type of workflow. Sorry about that. Moving this microphone out the way. But it allows me to kind of do things like that, and build music up in more creative ways. So I don't know if I'm gonna keep that one. That was just kind of for the purpose of quick demonstration, but just to show you that, like, that's, to me, that's really the MIDI production center part of the MPC. Like, it's, outside of the sampling and all that stuff, like the sampler is cool and whatnot, but yeah, the sequencer is really the thing that kind of ties it together for me. So hopefully that, I didn't expect to do that right now, but hopefully that was kind of like a little bit of a insight to how I approach it, at least when I'm using the MPC. And I tend to do the same type of methodology in Logic. Logic allows me to record like that too. Ableton, not so much. Ableton is a little bit of a different animal in terms of like layering tracks, and the way it responds to track arming and all that stuff is not as quick for me personally, but Logic definitely, I'm moving around like that as well. Like I'll let me see, I'll play you a piece of actually I might be able to just open up this Logic session and show you kind of the same approach that I took out. I started writing some music last night, so I'll share it just because we're talking about this subject right now. Of this kind of layering approach that I just showed. So I'm opening up the Logic session. Hopefully this doesn't completely destroy things. He said, Produce Mark says, you have to hit the play start 4 times when you start the beat to make it official. Yep. That's the official MPC stunt right there. That's funny. That's so funny. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see it. All right. Can y'all see that all right? Hopefully so. But yeah, this is a session I started last night. But the idea is that I use a lot of the same layering. Like you see, it's calling out 40 tracks on this. It's not really 40 tracks, but sometimes when I'm writing, like I use that same approach, like writing stuff piecemeal to like listen to it and help it to progress. In a way, it's kind of, like I said, it's like sampling or step editing in a way as well. I'll play the music so you kind of see how it sounds. It's rough right now, but it's just an idea I wrote last night. So like the guitars in here, for example, are kind of on different tracks. These are like, you know, a fake mute guitar, but I wrote the pieces on different tracks as I was just listening and grooving to it. Same thing with the keys on here. So I wrote that part and it stopped, and then so that's the second track right there, you see. So I'm kind of using that same approach with that. So yeah, that's kind of the same methodology, so to speak. You know, it's really focusing on writing the parts first, as opposed to necessarily. You know, I don't try to sit down and like, okay, let me just play the same thing that I know how to play, or quickly get something going. But I like to give myself an opportunity to find something that I wouldn't normally do, and I think that layered approach helps me to do that, because it's more like sample, listen, sample, listen, sample, listen, until you find the progression where it's like, okay, that's it right there. So same thing that I do on the MPC, I'll do on Logic. So that's why I kind of gravitated to Logic, because of that approach. And just, you know, when I'm working on Logic, just the other thing is track arming in Logic. Track arming is, let me see here. Let me get off the MPC for a second. Turn him off, actually. Track arming, just being able to quickly go through different tracks and not have to arm it automatically. That helps me to like work faster too. That's why I like that, because with Ableton, the thing is, I think it has a setting where you can automatically arm when you go to another track, but I think it does some weird stuff. That's kind of my workflow in Logic, like the same thing, same layered approach as just showed you on the MPC I use in Logic. All right, let's see, man. Y'all got any more questions or anything? Because I mean, we've been at this for 2 hours. I really appreciate everybody that's like hung in this far, man. I'm enjoying myself. I'm enjoying like talking and just discussing stuff. Like I said, please forgive the little initial fumble with the ES, but again, it was about exploring. It wasn't really like no, you know, I'm not presenting this as a master class on the Motif ES or anything, but it was more like, let's explore it together. So I appreciate y'all checking that out. If you haven't already done so, make sure you like this video. And also, if you're not subscribed, I don't know what you're doing, please subscribe to the channel. You know, and definitely if you want to continue to support this channel, you know, please make sure that you comment and, you know, share these videos and share these, share especially the producer function with other producers that you think could get value out of this. Also to mention, I in June released a experimental beat tape called The Human Experiment. It is a project that I started working on probably about 2011 actually, and I was going to release it sooner, and then life happened and I just decided not to, and you know, life happened again and I decided let's go ahead and do it. My whole concept and the reason that I did it changed, so I wanted to make sure that I put it out there. So something I worked hard on. It's definitely some different stuff. It's not like the stuff I was just playing right now, but you might have heard some of the ideas and stuff from different videos, but you can get it on ultrawest.com. It's called The Human Experiment. I have like a free version if you just want to download it and jam out to it. And I have a couple of paid versions if you want to support the channel, you know, go ahead and purchase it. I got a MP3 version and a WAV version. So it's 6 tracks, and you know, it's definitely some interesting stuff, man. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Cool. So Beat Rumble says, what do you use for streaming? I'm using OBS. So you know, for better or for worse, it's a cool software. Sometimes it's limited in some ways, but I've been trying to figure out ways to make it work. I just changed the setup tonight. Actually, I was using a analog mixer, which was giving me a lot of noise, a lot of problems. So now I'm using a audio interface to capture it. But yeah, you can check out the project on ultrawest.com, and I'll leave a link in the video description as well as the comments. So I'll link you directly to it. But yeah, check it out when you get a chance. CC Funk, I appreciate you. Appreciate the comment there. Yeah, I feel like that was just like the first time I did something on the Motif, on that level at least. And yeah, I'll probably do some more. If you guys got more questions or thoughts about that, you know, like I said, I was just kind of showing you some of the stuff I've been exploring on the Motif outside of just the sounds and whatnot. But if there's other questions or other thoughts and ideas about stuff you'd like to explore on that, I'm cool with that. I got a setup now that allows me to at least do a little bit more of that. But yeah, Snipe, I'll link it in the comment section. I'll pin the post so you can check that out, man. I appreciate everybody dropping in to support the channel, and also, you know, checking out the website. And let's keep doing this, guys. Like I said, this is something I want to keep doing. It's not necessarily a structured lecture or anything like that. It's about us like getting together and talking, fellowshipping, jamming, whatever, man. It's really what you guys make it. So, you know, I appreciate you guys for joining. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep getting together like this, and, you know, leave comments. You know, I ask all of you guys, leave a comment on this video letting me know what you'd like me to discuss next for the producer function, because that's always helpful as well, because sometimes I just go off of things that I'm creatively inspired by. But if there's topics that you guys are interested in, I'm okay with addressing it if it makes sense. You know, if it don't make sense, I'll let you know, like, I don't know, that's not gonna work for me, I can't do that. But, you know, for the most part, I'm open, man. So let's figure that out. But I appreciate y'all, man. I'm about to get off. It's been on for a couple hours now. I don't want to make the video too long, even though people making long videos these days. I'm about tired now, so I'm about to move. But I appreciate y'all once again. Y'all stay safe out there. Yes, David, I will keep this up. Like I said, I'm gonna keep this all up, and make sure that there's links in the video description to the stuff I mentioned, my project and other stuff that that's on my website. Make sure you guys check that out. Y'all stay safe out there. Y'all stay blessed. You know, until next time, I want to just tell you guys peace and God bless. All right.